Hey, this is Paul Sponcia with the IT company. I have two guys who I work with me today, Joe Guidali and Kyle Kelley. And I really just wanted to talk today. We were talking in one of our leadership meetings and a couple of our daily huddles about all the challenges that people have faced as they went home. And we had an influx and a flurry and all kinds of work that got done to get people working from home. And now, as states are starting to lift and plan the lifting of restrictions and people are starting to migrate back to their offices or even in a hybrid mode, there's a whole nother thing going on. Part of that is that as people went home, because it was so fast, there were probably a lot of things that were skipped from a security perspective or maybe weren't thought through because of speed. And we always, my friend Hank Brown says that in the context of confidentiality, integrity, and availability, whichever one gets the highest, the rest are going to suffer. So availability would have been the high one. That means that confidentiality and integrity, likely at some level, whether that's 1% or 50%, have suffered in the process of speed. And so we jotted down 6 things to think about, to talk about, to consider as people went home, and we're going to talk about those. But first, I'm going to ask Joe and Kyle to just quickly introduce themselves and what they do at the IT company, starting with Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Guidali, and I've been with the IT company just over 5 years. I work on professional services team, working with new and existing customers on implementing technology best practices, working with their businesses to understand how they work and on how to make technology make their businesses work better and stronger.
Great. Kyle?
My name is Kyle Kelley. I've been with the company for about 9 years. I'm a technical alignment manager. So my role is to go on site with customers, kind of do an assessment of their network, see where they fall compared to our best practices and industry standards and best practices, and then help make recommendations on how they can improve their overall IT stance to better serve their business needs.
Awesome. And a background on Kyle and Joe both. They've both done every job and role with the exception of accountant, and they play a little bit in that role sometimes too in our organization. So they have a deep knowledge and understanding of IT in our organization. So I'm going to start with Joe. First one we talked about was this idea of coordinating with your IT department or your partner in IT, such as us, and make sure everybody knows the plan and timelines. Can you talk a little bit about that, Joe?
Sure. When this, pandemic hit, we were all forced into a really reactive mode, and we had to, scramble to make sure that our employees were able to work and also be safe and their families were safe and that sort of thing. As we look at this, opportunity to return back to the work in offices, it's, a chance for us to switch from being really reactive and switch to being proactive and make sure that we are thinking through this process, what it looks like, how we're going to, coordinate moving people back, make sure that from your technology partner perspective, that we're part of that loop or your IT department is part of that loop so that they can really help to make sure that it's a smooth transition back.
You mean don't call your IT company or your IT vendor after you've gone back to the office and say, hey, we're back and we need some help.
Yeah, especially especially in the case when you're partnering with another company. There are likely lots of companies that are also returning to work at the same time. So making sure that we're able to coordinate and work together is going to make it more smooth.
Yeah, sure. Kyle, why don't you, instead of me reading it, why don't you grab number 2 and talk to everybody about this kind of one of these security ideas.
Yeah, number 2 is to ensure that all your machines, especially the ones that have left the network, but all of them across the board, are still up to par with your normal security posture. Typically, the kind of the network infrastructure is created with what kind of like a hard, crunchy core on the outside, whereas you have your internal business network, all the machines on there, and security is often pretty soft within that network. And then you have firewalls and security tools and things on the outside protecting that. Whereas if you take computers that were once in this secure core out to the outside world, they may not have all of the security tools that they needed to face that. And there's potential that they can pick up malware or something and then bring it back to the network. So before you bring these machines back, you want to make sure that they're still getting all their updates, because if they're outside of the network, you might have tools that are not updating them properly. Make sure their antivirus is up to date. Make sure any sort of security settings specific to your organization are still in place so that when you bring them back, they still have the same level of security protection as before. Another portion, in addition to the ones that left the network, a lot of updates and things like that get applied after hours. And if businesses have furloughed some employees and shut down machines to save money, make sure those get powered on beforehand so they have time to get caught back up with their updates and everything like that.
Good. Anything, I know that you're not, I guess people aren't going to be bringing the computers that they had at home. There's a part where some people didn't bring a computer from work to home. They may have elected to use a home computer. How does that play into this, if at all?
If they use their home computer, a lot of times that was just kind of as a stopgap. People needed to get connected, so they just had to use what they have. Now's a good time as things are starting to normalize a little bit and people are figuring out how they're going to move forward with their business to decide, is this going to be a practice that you want to use go forward? If so, work out ways to people harden their personal computers. If it's something that you guys decide that, no, we don't want people using their personal computers ever, then you need to start making plans on how to get business machines deployed to these people that will meet their needs for mobile work.
Joe, you want to pick up number 3 for us?
Sure. Kind of going along with what Kyle was talking about, security, excuse me, security is a multi-layer approach. It's like the layers of an onion. And, it's really important to make sure that there's software that is specifically designed to detect threats that may lie dormant, so that whenever they do return to the core business network, that those are being detected, and should they attempt to activate. So active hunting, looking for threats even that aren't in an executable mode, so that we can look for those and detect them before they become a problem.
That's something that someone would obviously have to talk to somebody technical about. Like, that whole idea of hunting is not something that I think the average person kind of knows what that is. I know we deploy that, as a standard for customers to go out and actively hunt, but I think that's one of those ones that is, really a tough one for people to kind of get their heads wrapped around. So I guess the theory would be just make sure before it returns back that you do a good scan, clean, review everything, all that stuff. And then if you have the technology, or you have a partner that has the technology, ask them to utilize that technology, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Kyle, you want to pick up number 4?
All right. Next one is to review and disable any remote access that you've granted, and then either disable it or plan on putting a more secure solution in place, because a lot of customers, they had to get work done from people outside the office, so they had to open up whatever means necessary to get employees working, and may have not thought through all of the security risks associated with doing that. So a common one was to open up remote desktop to servers, or they may have had a VPN or a firewall that had some VPN functionality that they just turned it on to get customers connected or employees connected without having any sort of security surrounding that, or any sort of risk assessments or planning behind that. So it's good to go back and review anything that was put in place as a stopgap and remove those. Anything that's put in place that is going to need to happen long term, need to start building some policies surrounding those, potentially put purpose-built remote solutions like SSL VPNs or applications to remotely connect the machines. And if you're using those applications like LogMeIn or GoToMyPC, things like that, you really need to settle on one for your entire organization and then build some policies surrounding that and make sure everything is deployed securely so you know who has access to what.
And one word we heard a lot throughout this process, I think about in all of these things, especially number 4, is two-factor authentication. You know, if you're going to continue to use RDP, VPN, LogMeIn, GoToMyPC, whatever, making sure that you have two-factor, multi-factor authentication turned on as just a baseline.
Yeah, two-factor is a big one because if you have everything in your office itself kind of functions as a second layer of security. Someone can't just generally walk into your office, sit down at a computer. But if you've got access from anywhere, that means anybody in the world also could have that access if they have your credentials. So if it's just your password protecting your systems, then it's good to have another layer on top of that.
All right, Joe, let's talk about this whole idea of security training.
So, historically, and definitely prior to this pandemic, as Kyle mentioned earlier, the network perimeter acts as that first layer of defense, but we're now in a world where we are all outside of the castle walls, so to speak. And security awareness, understanding security and understanding the threats has been really important, but almost immediately, as soon as people began working from home, we started seeing targeted threats that were targeting remote workers, really sophisticated threats. So security awareness training, making sure that all of the employees in an organization are really paranoid about the things that they click on, emails that are coming that, are maybe unexpected. Those sorts of things, everybody has to be in a really heightened state of security, especially when it comes with things that come in through emails.
Yeah, I think, that the one I think about now, and it's with Zoom and with Teams, but we're using Microsoft Teams to record this, and you see a lot of targeted Microsoft Teams invitation-looking emails that just look like a legitimate Teams invitation that are not there. They're there to scrape your Microsoft 365 username and password. Again, having two-factor authentication turned on will make a big difference because even if you fall for it, it's very likely, almost impossible that it won't. When they try to log in with your credentials, it's going to pop up on your phone or whatever and say, hey, someone's trying to log in from Indonesia or whatever. And you can deny that. So again, two-factor becomes really critical in that. All right, let's talk about backups, Kyle.
All right, with the added security risks of opening up your network to the outside world and computers going home and then coming back, and just all of this phishing threats of these fake emails and things like that, it's never been a more risky world from a security standpoint. And one of the biggest malware outbreaks we see is ransomware, which, if you're not familiar, it goes through across your entire network, takes all of your company data, it scrambles it so you no longer have access to it, and then someone, outside attacker, generally is trying to make you pay them to get your deck. But one of the biggest ways to protect yourself against that is having good backups, so that if ransomware happens and it's not exfiltrating data, the recovery is just almost a matter of restoring from backups and moving on. But backups are one of those things that, unless people are monitoring them and managing them, they can kind of fall by the wayside. We especially see this with on-premise IT departments, where they're so focused on day-to-day, getting people working, getting problems fixed, that backups always kind of go back to a back burner thing. They're super critical, but they're also can be time-consuming to manage, and they they're oftentimes not tested as often as they should be. So now would be a great time to do a test, restore some of your critical machines, make sure you can restore those servers, make sure you can get data off of those backups. And if you can't, you need to immediately make some corrections to get good backups, both local and offsite.
Yeah, the thing I think about in this whole thread of 6 things, is really we did another little video about the whole idea of after action reviews, but it makes sense in this one. This is kind of a big after action review. Is hey, we're returning back to work. Let's sit down and talk about these 6 things. Let's do an after action review. Who went home? Who used their home computer versus took a computer home? Who used, go to my PC versus a VPN, like outlining all that stuff and then being able to walk that backwards to figure out from a planning perspective what you're going to do. Because otherwise it'd just be like, oh, well, here's 6 things, check them, but you don't really know without the detailed plan. So just a reminder to everybody to do those after action reviews.
I was thinking about kind of along with that, this whole work from home thing really brought to focus there's different technologies and that sort of thing. It's an opportunity for us to really evaluate and reflect how these processes and technologies have changed our life, and really dig into them and determine what things that we want to keep and what things we want to integrate into our stacks.
The whole idea of if anybody's ever heard of start, stop, keep. What are the things you're going to start doing based on what you learn? So doing an after action review and then doing a start, stop, keep. What am I going to start doing based on this? What am I going to stop doing based on this? And what am I going to keep doing based on this? And I think we've learned a lot, by the use of this technology. It's open. Obviously, we're on Teams now. We're having conversations with customers on Teams and Zoom and stuff like that all the time. So, any final thoughts, either one of you? Any last things you want to say? Nope.
Nope.
Well, good. Well, I appreciate, as you both know, I appreciate you both, and thanks for being on. We kept it under 20 minutes, which is perfect. And so good stuff. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
everybody.